Effectors, welcome back to the Mass Effect Lorecast. This is Tom. I'm here with Sam and a bunch of our patrons because it is, again, another month has gone by. It is again time for a patron chat, and Sam and I are excited to talk with our patrons about their perspective. I can't even talk, Sam. I'm doing it again. Their perspective on religion in Mass Effect. And I'm interested to see where this goes. This is kind of, I don't know, this is something I'm pretty familiar with. Again, I have a degree in religious studies and also philosophy, and a lot of those things do play into some of the different cultures. So I'm excited to see where this goes. Sam, are you excited about this? Do you know much about this topic? Because it feels like one of those kind of side topics, right? Sam just woke up, by the way. Welcome. I was just communing with the gods. So I can't wait to talk about religion in the Mass Effect universe. It displays itself in a variety of ways. And so I can't wait to hear what our patrons here have to say. Yeah. So here, I'm just going to read out everybody's names. We've got kind of a full house again. We have Magister Davida, Edboy, Genesis, Scott, and Turbo Toboggan joining, and maybe some other people who can pop in here once they restart their PCs or whatever they need to do. And let's just get into it. I thought this was an interesting one. It got a lot of votes. It seems like it's something all of you are very interested in. Who would like to start us out? Who has some thoughts on religion or a specific race and the way they handle religion or their own personal philosophies? And I think there might be some fuzzy edges around this stuff. We don't only have to talk about like worshiping a deity. We can talk about tangentially related concepts like morality or lifestyle decisions that are based on beliefs of their culture and those kinds of things. Who would like to kick us off? Does anybody have any like initial thoughts? I saw Jen's hand first. I saw Scott unmute. I'm going to go with the hand first. Jen, kick us off. What do you think?
So my favorite religion in this game, and I guess it's just a true moment, is when Thane and Kolyat and Shepard in Mass Effect 3 read one of Thane's prayers from his prayer book. To me, it was one of the most impactful scenes that had a religious overtone to it, but it just was really, really touching. And especially, I mean, as a female Shepard, if you've romanced Thane, it's even more heartfelt. But even as a bro Shep who didn't, or as a female Shepard who didn't romance Thane, you still feel the weight and the impact of it as you are reading a prayer with his son and you together. Yeah,
so I'm trying to look this up real quick so we can get the actual words. I don't know if anybody else... Oh, do you have them? Okay. Do you want to read it for us?
Oh, reading the Thane prayer. Okay.
Yeah, because I think it'll be more fun to actually discuss it in detail for everybody to hear it and be reminded of it again.
Kalahira, mistress of inscrutable depths, I ask forgiveness. Kalahira, whose waves wear down stone and sand. Kalahira, wash the sins from this one and set her on the distant shore of the infinite spirit. Kalahira, this one's heart is pure, but beset by wickedness and contention. Guide this one to where the traveler never tires, the lover never leaves, the hungry never starve. Guide this one, Kalahira, and she will be a companion to you as she was to me.
Very nice. Very nice reading. Namen. So in Monty Python, they say Namen in the Holy Grail. Anyway, it's one of those jokes that always comes.
We can just say ramen.
Yeah, ramen. Do you think, so this raises certain thoughts in my mind, having studied a lot of these kinds of concepts and things. Does this resonate with you for the personal level of it? Or one of the things I notice in this is there are aspects of dualism. There's aspects of a place you go where things are more perfect. There are a lot of similarities to what Thane seems to believe as to what a lot of human beings seem to believe. And does that affect and resonate with you on that level? Or is it more of just this is a very personal moment?
A little bit of both. It is a very personal moment because, spoiler alert, this is the scene where Thane officially dies. And this is his final gift to you, is this prayer of salvation for your soul, not for his own.
Mm-hmm.
And it resonates. And I think that it's, especially when I'm thinking of it as it being read to shepherd, even if you're going like a pure renegade shepherd, this one's heart is pure, but is beset by wickedness. So there's all this going on around you, and if for a paragon shepherd as well, all of this wickedness is going on around you. The reapers are attacking. You've got, fighting on your ship going on. There's all of this going on around you, but you still try to maintain a pure heart with the idea of what my end goal is for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
Not
giving into the struggle, the darkness out there that's trying to consume you and fighting back against it. That kind of theme. Yeah. Let's open this up. Who else has thoughts on this? Or Sam, do you have thoughts?
I actually wanted to mention that I believe Thane is somewhat unusual for his religious beliefs. So before we prescribe this to all of Drell, this could just be a Thane thing, because if you listen to the language of that prayer, then I believe you hear something about Kalahira, mistress of inscrutable depths, obviously meaning the ocean. So this prayer could be referencing what he's learned from Hanar culture.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I know the Hanar are religious as well. I wonder if this is something he picked up from them. Interesting. I'm going to look this up. Who else has thoughts while I look this up? Anybody else have thoughts? Anybody else remember this scenario? Did it hit you in a certain way? Scott, I saw your hand. Magister's shaking his head. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good one. I think, it's one of those touching moments because Koliot and Thane are kind of have just barely reconnected, right? And made amends. And when Koliot starts to pray, Thane says something to him about you pray like the priests do or something like that. So there's also this beautiful, it's a way for Koliot and Thane to have a connection despite years of sort of being apart. They find this kind of common thing, which I think is also a really cool element to it as well. So I think it is, that not all Drell have this, but it sounds like there's at least a sect of them that do. And so somehow Koliot has found that and it's bringing him comfort, whereas before he was just very jaded about his dad. So I think that's a really beautiful thing. And I think it even kind of comes back in the Citadel DLC. You have the funeral for Thane, which is the one not party moment in the midst of that whole DLC. And it's a really kind of, I think Koliot kind of leans into that there too. So there is this kind of this prayer that's outside of just Thane doing it. That's kind of nice.
Yeah. Magister, you had some thoughts as well.
I did. I had thoughts in regards to, two parts. One with the whole ocean and water metaphors that are going on there. And the fact that Thane's people coming from almost toward the end there of his, before they were rescued, it was a barren planet by that point, right?
Correct. The planet Rakana's ecology was dying when the Drell were rescued by the Hanar.
So a bit of an irony, having a religion more based on water or ocean or the depths of everything. I feel like that adds to a bit of a dynamic there. And also the fact that there was an actual ritual burial rites in Mass Effect. You have, especially in Mass Effect 3, where you have all these people dying left and right, the hopelessness of it all. But you have this just one quiet moment where one of your party members, whether you were romancing them or not romancing them, just having this peaceful moment where you get to send him off to the distant shore, as well as him giving you comfort in that time. It was really interesting to see that in an actual video game, especially in that time frame back then.
I like the way you stated that. It's like a moment of meaning amidst meaninglessness, the suffering and death and all of these terrible things. And yet And it's one of the things that we as humans do. We use moments like that to almost grasp back meaning into our lives. Like, this death meant something amidst all the chaos and the nonsense out there. This still means something. We still have a direction. We still have a focus. We still have, a memory. All of these things. There's still meaning here, and that is such a deep-seated human thing. And I think that's really cool. I found on the N7 World website a description of the Drell that talks about Kalahira, the goddess that he mentions, and two other gods, and a little bit of a description about their religion. And I'm not sure if they're just drawing this from Thane himself or if this is for all Drell and somehow they have some other reference to confirm this.
Well, this is... N7 World, for those who don't know, is the Mass Effect 5e website for if you wanted to run a homebrew D&D campaign. As far as I know, almost everything on that website is canon. They do take a little bit of artistic license with it and extrapolate a little bit further in some regards, but I'm not sure in this regard. So why don't you go ahead?
So I don't know. They say most Drell are deeply religious, and I don't know if they're just drawing assumptions based on Thane, because we don't have too many examples of this, or if they have some source to confirm that. I'm not sure. Believing that they have souls separate from their bodies, they see death as a departure from the body, and they also state that a person's body and soul form a whole. So it's dualist. A lot of humans believe this, that we are both body and spirit or soul or something like that. When the soul is traumatized or otherwise disrupted, or the body is ill or injured, a person is no longer whole. And that has a capital W. They also believe that their body can be directed as a separate entity from themselves. Thus, some Drell take no responsibility when executing an order given by the Hanar, even if the order is an assassination. The religion includes at least 3 gods, which Drell often pray to for guidance and protection. Amankira, Lord of Hunters, Arashu, goddess of motherhood and protection, and Kalahira, goddess of the oceans and afterlife. And this is a thing that you see in a lot of these ancient religions, is the combination of things. This goddess is both the ocean and the afterlife. And I would assume that probably meant that if they don't do it now, that they used to bury their dead at sea. They used to send their dead to the afterlife, which was connected to the ocean, and the ocean being deep and under and dark and those kinds of things. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool stuff. All right.
Well, I do want to jump in about that, because it does sound like the writers of that website were taking most of those details from our conversations with Thane specifically. So I don't know how much we can extrapolate that this is a wider, religion that a majority of Drell might believe. That being said, we know that Rakana, the Drell homeworld, is an arid homeworld. There's massive plains, so I don't think that there's really much of an ocean on that planet. Not from what I remember from the planet's description, and that's actually the difference between the climate in Rakana and Kaje, the Hanar homeworld, is part of the reason why Thane suffers from Kepral's syndrome. The difference in the humidity, I think, if I'm remembering right. Yeah. So it's his direct reference to so many different ocean deities is really interesting to me. But I also wanted to ask our patrons how they feel about Thane's stated ideology of separating the spirit from the body to such an extent that he would absolve himself of all guilt of his own actions when employed by the Hanar.
Everybody's thinking. I have to fill the gap and give you guys a moment to think. Genesis, do you have thoughts on this?
I think it's really, really interesting to be put in that mindset where I wouldn't be held accountable for my actions because I'm just following orders. This is what you told me to do. And whether I believe it was morally right or wrong, it is the orders that I was given, and therefore my body is following this order, but that sin is not on my soul. I mean,
right. I don't know if that defense would hold up in court.
But I think in this case, they're not so much worried about the courtroom situation as they are about their afterlife or their being right with their God or those kinds of things. And I can't think of any specific analogies here, but I'm pretty sure that you can find analogies both in early American history with slaves having to do things directed by their masters that went against their beliefs, and also ancient Hebrews, because there was slavery back in biblical times. I think there are probably similarities there in justifying the things that they were told to do and that they had no choice over, with still maintaining some sort of uprightness with their spiritual beliefs.
But it's interesting you bring up the word slave, because that's something that Shepard can say to Thane, and then Thane basically counters with, "Don't insult me, Shepard. The Drell are not Thane to the Hanar." And so he very much is very assertive that the Drell maintain their autonomy. But in terms of his ideology, specifically, I'm most interested by the fact that, you know, if you have a Paragon ship, you can press and say, what, you don't take personal responsibility for anything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not exactly the same thing. It's not a perfect analogy. But yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of justifications people make in order to still feel like they're standing upright with their belief system, even though they might be doing things against it. People like that is a very human thing to do, is to kind of twist that in ways. Scott.
Yeah, I struggle with that. And I think one of the reasons is so my undergraduate university was a Catholic university, and I am not Catholic, but I would watch people go to confession, right, that I was friends with, and they would tell the priest all this stuff that they did. And the priest would say, okay, we'll say this many Hail Marys and do this, and then you're good. And then they would just do the same stuff the next week and then repeat, right? Go to confession. And it was kind of like, I was like, what's the point? Like, that's not how this is supposed to work. Right. And so I think that's kind of the frustration I sense with this thing with Thane, is it's like, I would probably be the one that pushes him. Like, no, like you're still consciously in charge of your body, whether you're trying to detach your soul from it, and its actions. Like, so, I think the difference is, though, something that I don't understand is that, Drell, right, remember everything they've ever done. So I can also think that Thane would have to rationalize it that way, because he can go back and relive all those things, as he does right in front of us, right, all the time. And so maybe he's rationalizing it in this way because otherwise he's afraid of what it'll be like when he goes back and remembers those moments, if he remembers those moments. Yeah. But for me, it feels very much in that vein of like, well, I'll just say that I'm sorry and it's all forgiven and we move on without any actual accountability for what you've done.
Right.
And my opinion is you can't do that. That's not how it's supposed to work.
Right. Yeah, no, you make a good point. Everybody has to psychologically deal with the things they feel regretful about in some way. And there are healthier ways to do that, and there are less healthy ways to do that, for sure. Yeah. All right. I'm not sure that there's enough topics here for everybody to kind of bring their own thing. So feel free to chime in if you don't have a thing, but you want to just chime in on other people's topics and things like that. But Jen, thank you so much for this. This is a really great way to start this off. Scott, you said you raised your hand. You said that you had a topic you wanted to bring up. What were you thinking about sharing?
Well, it kind of builds off something that Sam said in the Ilos episode, right? Which is how much have the Protheans influenced the religion of those who follow them? Because, thinking about, there's that text thing we get about them observing, Cro-Magnons. We know that they influenced the Asari. We know they influenced the Hanar. It just seems like for everyone, they're there meddling and at the same time creating their religion. And so it's kind of one of those things where, I don't know about, obviously as much about like the Asari religions and how those developed. When I think about Earth, and I think about like ancient Egypt, more polytheistic, things with like, they talk about like seeing things in the sky, and all that stuff that you see on Ancient Aliens.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, I don't really know. I'm not so sure that I could see how that maybe would affect Christianity. or Islam or things necessarily.
Well, there are parts of the Old Testament for sure that where people are seeing things in the sky and they're calling them angels and things like that.
That's not, yeah. So I just think it's interesting, like, though, if you're looking at the Mass Effect universe, it seems like the Protheans maybe unintentionally or intentionally created kind of these religious cults, you know, just by their meddling in the galaxy. And I find that really kind of fascinating as we look at the world in that we live and thinking about that. Like, is there life in the universe? Well, if it has been here, has that infected, you know, our religious stuff? So I kind of thought that was interesting, especially given what happens with like our conversations with Ashley right out the gate, where she's like, I believe, don't you get on me about it, you know? And even like Suvi and Andromeda goes pretty hard on, you know, still being Christian. So I think that's kind of interesting given the ever expanding world that we learned about.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about because we don't have a definitive answer or not, but I would speculate that any primitive culture that sees advanced enough technology would try to explain it as some sort of magic or God or something like that because they have no way of understanding it. Who was the scientist that basically said like I forget the quote, any sufficiently advanced technology would appear like magic to a primitive culture or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. But yeah, like absolutely. That could be the origins of so many things. And we just don't know. Who else wants to chime in on this one? Who wants to talk about ancient aliens, or at least the Protheans, affecting religion? Do you think that that's a possibility? Do you think that in Mass Effect that's a possibility, even for the Earthlings, even for people who still believe something in that time? I'm seeing nodding of heads. I'm seeing some head nodding. Ed?
Well, isn't this kind of something that's brought up in Mass Effect 1 with the Consul's medallion she gives you? Like you have that vision of like a Prothean interacting with all the humanity.
Yeah,
I don't know how that would affect religion, but
right. I think that the seeds are definitely there that they've planted in the lore, and yeah, like we talked about last week, that Elatania vision with the Cro-Magnon hunter, the fact that we have evidence they were monitoring humanity from Mars. I think that there's strong evidence to suggest that Protheans led to spiritual or religious beliefs among both humans and Asari. And this is also why you got to bring Javik with you when you go to the Thessia mission in Mass Effect 3, because the dialogue between him and Liara is just amazing when you're in the temple, and it sheds a lot of insight as to what we're talking about here.
There were some questions people have had about, like, I don't know how that would have affected like our world religions, like Christianity or Islam or those kinds of things. So real brief, I'll give you an explanation to kind of make that make sense. Islam is also based on certain books that are included in Christianity, like the New Testament and the Old Testament. Christianity is based on the New Testament and the Old Testament, right? Judaism is based on the Old Testament and then the Talmud and some other books that came after that. All of these things go back to the Old Testament. And in the Old Testament, you have, for example, the seeing of wonders in the sky. This happens during Jesus's birth. This happens for prophets like Elisha and Elijah. There's a number of different times where there is some sort of sign in the sky, whether that's a comet or maybe an angel or whatever they're describing it as in those books. The reason why that's important is because it's a confirmation of belief. It is often in a situation where the character is in some sort of prayer state or seeking a sign from God that they are doing the right thing or something like that. And a sign in the sky like that is confirmation to them that their faith is true and that they are being heard. And it can be more than that, but even if it's just that solidifies and becomes a thing that people share, and that spreads. Oh, there was a sign that our God is the true God, all of these things. And if you go back to the ancient world, the original God of the Hebrews was one of many gods in the ancient world. All of the different tribes, all the different groups had their own beliefs and their own specific gods. And to say that, well, my God actually sent me a sign and there was a star in the sky is proof that you would use against your neighbor to show that your God is more powerful than their God. So a lot of these things create the bones of what eventually evolved into our modern day religious beliefs. So yes,
my dad can beat up your dad.
It's a lot of my dad would beat up your dad. Even in a polytheistic religion, even among, say, the Egyptians or the Greeks, you would typically, and this still happens in Hinduism, you pick certain deities that you align more with. Or if you're Catholic, you pray to certain saints. And to say that the one that you align with happens to be responding in more loving to their followers or whatever is something that you would use in order to justify your beliefs and your actions. So all of that stuff echoes throughout history and becomes our modern day religions and eventually the religions that people believe in Mass Effect among the humans. So quick little aside there.
Scott, you also brought up Ashley being very, having a chip on her shoulder about religion from the second that we meet her. And I found that to be interesting because in sci-fi, it has become somewhat of a trope that God doesn't exist, and if you believe in him, you're dumb as hell. It's just so overplayed at this point in sci-fi. So I found it interesting in 2007 when I was playing through this that Ashley is this staunch believer in God, and she's not like zealous about it to that extent, but she does have a chip on her shoulder about having been called dumb and things like that we are used to in sci-fi media about this. So I wanted to ask our patrons how you perceived Ashley's defense of her religion when we got to Mass Effect 1.
I saw Magister unmute first. I don't know who else was. I know, Ed, you want to chime in too, but Magister, go ahead, and then we'll jump over to Ed.
Okay, I found it refreshing. Like you said, it oftentimes whenever it's like a space fair or space fantasy, is either its own religion, like the Force, or the Voice, or whatever else, and not really like the originals or something that came from the original planet or something like that. So, and I believe that your shepherd could also like quote a scripture back to her, which I found really, I thought that was pretty cool to have that like this moment of bonding there. Like, yes, we're literally in the middle of space, and we work with people that can throw powers across the sky. But yeah, I still believe in my faith, and it's important to me. I thought that was pretty refreshing take from Ashley.
Never an atheist in a foxhole is, I believe, what Shepard says, and that applies to Thane as well, because he's very much in a foxhole, right? That he is battling this illness, and but all right, I'll open it up to anyone else who wanted to chime in.
Ed wanted to chime in too. Ed, what were you thinking?
So Ashley still believing in God is actually something I thought about, like I guess in real life, I used to say like God didn't create all these other species, like possible alien species that could be living out though. So I don't think Ashley's crazy for still believing in a God in this future sci-fi space, because you couldn't say if he really did or didn't create like all these different aliens.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how I would have to wonder in our own future how traditional religion actually survives or changes if and when we meet other species out there. Like, how is that actually going to work? I also agree with Sam. Oftentimes in sci-fi movies and games, you have religion and science, and they're at these opposite poles, and they're just like so extremely far away from each other. But that doesn't create an interesting story to me. Like, that's fine if the scientists don't believe in a God, and if the religious don't fully invest in science because they're still holding on to something else. That whatever. It's more interesting to go, well, what's the middle thing? Right? Like, what we're traveling across space faster than light, and like Magister is saying, biotic powers and all of these other things. But what does that actually mean for somebody who has faith and tries to actually combine the two. That becomes the more interesting story in my perspective. Not that I'm saying what I personally believe or not. I just think that makes for better storytelling. That's just interesting to me. Anybody else want to chime in on this topic? Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like that they have Suvi be the scientist who is the faithful person, right, in Andromeda, because it kind of goes straight into the trope of science and religion and combines them in one. But Ashley's more defensive, I think, of her faith than Suvi is. And I think it's interesting, knowing that Christianity still exists on Earth. We know Cerberus assassinates a pope, right? Because they don't like that the pope's too liberal. So there's nothing there. So it's still influential enough. There's still enough people that seem to subscribe to it that it's not like Ashley's necessarily in a tiny minority. But I wonder, being in the military, if she is in more of a minority there. But I think it is too, when you look at a universe, you're thinking about First Contact War. I wonder what that was like, for her family being faithful. Was that the only comfort they had in the midst of the chaos? Oh crap, well, let's figure out the one thing we have to kind of lean on. So I don't hate that she defends it. I like that she defends it. I think it's a video game, so nothing's perfect. The dialogue's never great, but they do a pretty good job of it. So I think it's nice to throw it in there, at least, because it leads to interesting character development. So yeah.
And I think that the middle stuff is way more interesting, how that plays out and how people justify it, and all that makes a better story in my mind. Ranger joined us as well. Ranger, do you have any thoughts on any of this? Do you want to chime in? I don't want to miss out on getting your thoughts on this. If you want to take a minute and think about it and then chime in when you're ready, you can do that. I kind of put you on the spot.
I had a lot of stuff I had planned to say.
Well, tell you what, you take a minute. We'll go thank our patrons, and then we'll come back and we'll get back to Ranger, and Ranger's going to tell us some of his thoughts on this. So don't go anywhere.
Message coming in. Patching it through.
I am sovereign, and this
Lorecast
is mine. I like the sound of that.
All right, here we are in the middle of the show. We have to thank all our patrons. Thank you for being here, patrons. And thank you to all the rest of our patrons on patreon.com/Mass Effect Lorecast. And Sam, we got a brand new patron who has maybe my favorite name so far. Our newest patron goes by the name Batarian Buttshot.
Wow. I didn't see that. That's incredible.
Yes. Thank you for signing up. We're so glad that you are here. Batarian Buttshot. Also... we have to shout out our Shepherd tier patrons, Ed Boy, Kira C, Lieutenant Tessino, and William. Thank you so much for your support as well. Head over to Mass Effect on Patreon. Go check everything out if you want to help out the show. If we're helping you get through your workday or your commute or your workout or mowing your lawn because it's springtime and the summer's almost here, then, go check it out. Maybe you'll find some stuff you like. Also, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, like this one from XX Silent Evil 06XX. From the United States. He writes, Big Dumb Jellyfish. Liara, that's all I have to say. All jokes aside, I found this podcast when I was going through a dark time in my life and just got done with the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, but didn't want my adventure to end. So I found you guys and I fell in love with the podcast immediately. Anyway, I hate texting with a passion, so I'll say one more thing. Sam and Tom are pretty cool dudes. Keela Salai. Thanks so much, Silent Evil. Also, if you want to leave a 5-star review on Spotify or any other platform, you can do that as well. All of that stuff is helpful. And if you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we'll read it out on a future episode of the show. So lots of fun ways you can interact and help us out, and we would really appreciate it. So thanks for everything, everybody. Thanks for being here. Let's move on with the conversation. Here we go.
Spit it out, or are you trying to build suspense?
You're so dense, sir. Obviously, I do not know as much about human relationships as I thought.
All right, we're back. Ranger, do you feel like you're ready to go? You can give me a thumbs up if you want some more time to think. He's getting a shrug. I'm getting a shrug here.
No, I think I know why I'm having such a hard time with this topic, and it's possibly because I'm not that big of a religious person per se. Mm-hmm. But whenever something religion is thrown into a video game such as Mass Effect, it's a nice thing to see, in my opinion.
And why is that? Why do you find it, as a not particularly religious person, why do you find that that's actually an appealing thing?
I want to say it shows the side of me that, that's still there, but, I shoved down deep, like, hey, get out of here type of thing. Okay.
All right. So it kind of opens up a topic and a focus in you that you normally don't engage with.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. Yeah. And, to your point, there's a wide spectrum of types of religiousness that happens. You have somebody like Ashley, who seems to be, like Sam said, Judeo-Christian, very traditional earth religion. You have Sari, who are more pantheistic. And we were discussing this in the patron chat ahead of time. It's kind of like the Force, this idea that like everything is connected to God. We're all part of God. We're all inside God. If you were to imagine that the entire universe and everything throughout all time are all pieces of God. God is not separate. He's not at a distance. But also a pantheistic belief generally ascribes to this idea that God is also not very personal. It's more of a God is a force of nature kind of thing, and we're all a piece of the divine here in this reality, seeing it from our own perspective. So you have this wide spectrum across that. Does that engage with you in a way where you just start thinking?
Yeah,
more?
I mean, I do like to see like the various other types of religion, like you were saying, like if I'm watching Star Wars, seeing the Force be used, that's obviously a galaxy far, far away is religion.
Yeah.
Heck, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and in that, just like with Mass Effect, they have all these different aliens, and they all have their own religion, and it's nice to see, a melting pot come together, pretty much,
right,
of all these different religious views.
Right. And so what I'm actually hearing from you here is it's more engaging to see that different peoples, different races, different whoever's have some, it's more of like the will or the seriousness with which they engage with their world through that faith that's appealing. And even though they're different and they don't necessarily all agree, that's not what matters. What matters is that it means something to them and it motivates them in their own lives. And that you find that engaging.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. I mean, I was kind of reading between the lines there, but I feel like that's what you were getting at.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sam, did you want to say something?
I was going to say, I think it's interesting that we have this wide breadth of religions displayed, or religions and spirituality. That's really what we should have been saying this whole episode, because some of them really don't categorize into the neatly defined category of religion. But there's this very wide spectrum of how they present in Mass Effect, and yet if you pay close attention to the community's reaction, people are far more accepting and on average, they're far more accepting and approving and willing to understand when we hear from people like Thane, or when we hear, by the goddess, and we learn a little bit about more about a theme in Asari, mythology, than they are when they talk to Ashley. Because at least for me, and I've been active on forums for quite a while now for Mass Effect, by and large, the default answer, and this could just be because it's a very loud vocal minority, but the loudest voice is often "go to hell."
Wait, on the internet?
Ashley,
on internet forums?
Yeah. Ashley, go to hell. Yeah. Thane, you're our special boy. You keep doing it.
Right, right. We do have this thing where we tend to, push down what appears to be a majority belief and raise minority beliefs. Like there's a thing in our culture where we tend to do that. It's kind of like a balance thing. I wonder if that plays into it, or if people are just angry. That's probably what
I think it's a human thing. Yeah. I honestly think it's a human thing, because we also see it in the game with how racism is portrayed, not just from Ashley, but other human characters. Racism and xenophobia, unacceptable when humans practice it. But when it's espoused by aliens like Garrus or Rex, there are special boys.
Right.
We couldn't.
Because we see them
we have to understand.
as a minority, even if they aren't really a minority. But but we're all seeing it from the human perspective, where humans are actually the minority in this situation. But yeah. That's it. That is interesting. All right, let's. We've got a little while still left for the show. Who else wants to chime in? Has a specific topic they wanted to bring, or a perspective, or whatever? Magister, I saw your thing.
Yeah, I was also interested religion wise. Well, religion, spiritualness of it, of the Koreans' belief, because they don't really espouse like fully like what's a god or goddess, but it feels a lot more about like more of a place, the spirituality of a place. I can't remember what the terminology of the when you put like personality and face into like a place or objects and things like that.
Almost like the spirit of the location, the spirit of the thing around you. And this is something you see even in modern day beliefs among different types. The idea of like, well, there's a specific place in the forest that it feels holy. There's just something about it. It feels like a holy space or something like that, right?
And the whole by the home world, like they put so much. There's so much longing. There's so much meaning behind it, behind the whole community aspect. Like one day we will all get there. It might not be in my time. It might not be in my children's time, but one day it will be there. It's almost a religious experience, especially like when you're having like the trial sequence and they like have their moments of like call and response, basically like any church service that you might go to.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see like when something is taken away from you and you feel so robbed of it that it basically turns into its own spiritual enlightenment in itself.
Do you think that's because so much of what they need to do is based on faith, based on a belief that they will be able to make their future better? And that's the one thing that's really continuing to drive them is a belief, even though if that belief isn't in a deity or a god or an afterlife or anything like that, it's still a belief. It's not founded on facts. It's founded on personal faith.
Literally, especially with the fact that all the other alien species turn their back on them because they made AI. You're wrong. Everything that bad happened to you, that's on you. And then you also have your own form of demons in the Geth. And then literally you're being chased away. You are nomadic. You can't stay in one place. All you really have is that desire and that hope for that. Otherwise, you might as well just open up the vents and have a good time. Have a good time right now, because tomorrow's not promised. That's
a really interesting analysis of that, Magister, especially that you said tomorrow's not promised. You know, while you were talking about that, I kept thinking that they do treat Rannoch as if it is the promised land. And it is this, city on the hill, so to speak, that so many people have not actually been alive to remember. And yet it's this myth that continues on and on and on that they will return someday. I mean, it ultimately turns out not to be a myth if you do solve the war in their favor or you negotiate peace. But the other thing which is interesting is you mentioned them being nomadic. And so in that regard, they are representative of many minority populations throughout history who have been forced out of a place through either genocide or through, forced displacement of some kind of means. And so the Koreans are on this veritable exodus. And yet in the lore, Koreans send out their youngest members on pilgrimages. So, and there's this whole aura of religion surrounding them and what we know about religion in our own world. I mean, even Tally's character design is designed to look like the I can't remember the name.
The head shawl thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That nuns wear. And she was supposed to represent that kind of chastity, I believe it was called in one of the art books or something like that.
Virgin Mary is often shown with something draped over her head. Like that's a very common iconography. Yeah. Turbo's had his hand up. Turbo, you wanted to chime in on this.
I don't know if I'm misremembering, but don't they also have like this figure who's gone out and they're waiting for them to come back?
Like some sort of like Messiah-like character that they're
I don't
looking for the
like
return?
that. I couldn't remember, like there's supposed to be like this male figure that made something and is out. I could be misremembering, and they're waiting for him to come back. I could have sworn Tally said something about it.
I don't know. Sam, does that ring a bell?
It doesn't ring a bell to me. Perhaps you're thinking about her father?
No, I could just be. Maybe I'm mixing it with another game. But I could have sworn Tally said something about like a kind of like builder guy that left, and they're waiting for him to come back to help them get back their planet.
I don't know. Yeah.
The closest thing I can think of that you may be thinking about is from the novels where they send out scouts into like the unknown, like the more unknown regions of space to try to find a new home. I think that might be what you're thinking about, but I don't think there's any kind of like religious in it, the religion stuff tied to it.
I think I'm remembering maybe now since no one else remembers, I think I'm probably remembering a different
okay.
series then.
Okay. Well, if anyone else remembers anything about this, then feel free to chime in and explain it a little bit more. All right. Man, we've gone through a lot of different topics. We're getting close to the end here. Anybody else want to chime in with anything else we haven't covered yet? I think maybe we're good. I don't know. Sam, you have any other thoughts?
Well, I have tons of thoughts. In fact, we're going to have to make a couple of episodes specifically, looking at religion. Maybe we should invite, Teacup and G-Cup, that they're big on theology. Mm-hmm. We can invite them on some future episodes. But, I had wanted to bring up in chat here, Genesis had shared that one of the Ashley quotes in regards to religion, and you were talking about this, Tom, coinciding, science and exploration with religious beliefs. Ashley saying that she's looking out the window of a spaceship and seeing all of space and the beauty of it all, and saying, how can you not believe? Mm-hmm. And that stands at such odds with a lot of the traditional sci-fi view, was that, look out your window, we're in space. How could you believe in a God?
Right.
And the fact that she's using that as evidence for her belief, how could something so amazing and beautiful not have been created?
Right.
By an intelligent designer.
Yeah. It's the argument from... There's an argument from creation. There's the argument of just the way that the world works, how beautiful it can be, and all of these things. And then, of course, there's the counter argument about how, it might be beautiful from some perspectives, but it's also freaking terrifying and horrific from other perspectives. So it depends. But yeah,
it definitely makes sense, like that viewpoint, because kind of you just said, how stuff is so perfectly created, how nice it is. We know that life like us is rare to find, if not impossible. Mm-hmm. So when you have this many planets that had the perfect conditions for life, it could be hard not to believe that there is something guiding that or creating that life. And you have so many different places that are just flourishing with life, that it's made perfectly for them.
Right.
Cue the Reaper horn, because it was the Reapers who were designing and guiding evolution, at least in Mass Effect.
Yeah.
So maybe Ashley worships the Reapers. Shocked YouTuber reaction.png. And that's how we get views on YouTube. You can thank me later.
That's it right there. Well, everybody, thank you for chiming in and sharing your perspectives on this. It is an interesting topic, and it is something there's always a lot of speculation about, because it's not just a thing you can put your finger on, right? So much of this means so much subjectively to every individual person in different ways. So it's always cool to talk around this stuff. Well, it's time to wrap it up. So let's go back through, and feel free to shout out anything that you want to put out into the universe. Tell people about a project you're working on or something, or you can just say, glad to be here, that kind of thing. Let's go back through in the order on my screen. We're going to start with Magister. Magister, you got anything you want to share?
Yes, thank you for having me. This is Magister Davida. If you still working on that Fiverr account, as well as offering services via Discord or any other type of things, if you need assistance with coming up with a character, whether it be for acting or tabletops, or even just a regular warping, Or if you need help with your world building, whether it be fantasy, sci-fi, or just modern day, I'm more than willing to lend some time as a consult to help you build your world and build your characters and build your, or maybe even your religious studies. So, hey, if you're interested, once more, that's Magister DeVita.
Awesome. Yeah, reach out to Magister for all that stuff. Thanks for being here, man. Ed, you got anything you want to share?
Nope. Just on the Discord. Currently playing through Mass Effect 2.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks for being here. Scott, you're up next. Do you have anything you want to share?
Just glad to chime in.
Well, glad you're here. Thanks for being here. Turbo, I'm glad you made it. It's good to see you. Oh, you're still muted, though.
I have absolutely nothing.
Nice. All right. As usual. Well, thanks for being here, Turbo. And then Green Wicked Ranger. Anything you want to share with the world?
Just happy to be here, since I've been gone for quite some absences. But, if you ever want to get up with me, I'm on Discord, Xbox, PlayStation. Always happy to have a good conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. And then Genesis, you're wrapping us up.
I have 2 shows part of the network, the Two Girls, One Ship podcast, where we analyze, rate, and review all that the world of video game romances has to offer, and the Cyberpunk Lorecast, where we talk about the foundations of the past, the state of Night City today, and the news of the future for all things cyberpunk.
Yeah, go check out those shows as well. Also on the Robots Radio Network. So you can look up whatever podcast you're listening to this on, or you can go to robotsradio.net and find links over there. So thanks, Jen. Sam, it's been another month. This has been super fun again with all these wonderful patrons, and we got to wrap it up. Anything you want to share before we go?
Well, yeah, so I'm still streaming my personal canon playthrough of Mass Effect. That's on Saturdays. But I've also taken up streaming Fallout on Tuesdays.
Yes,
so I've been streaming. I'm playing offline anyway, and I have been for a couple months now. So I figured, you know what? I think people would probably enjoy watching me play.
Watching Preston blow you up multiple times.
Oh my
over and
gosh.
over and over again.
I need to get that grenade launcher away from that maniac, because he killed me like 6 times in like, I want to say 10 minutes.
Yeah, you were very happy about it. You were not upset at all.
Yeah, no danger close from Preston either. Just, doesn't matter. Even if it's a little itty bitty Mirelurk hatchling, it's getting a grenade.
Yep. Yeah. Sam died so many times. He was just cussing all over the place. So I had to hit the no cussing button with my channel points. And then he was like, son of a, I can't say it. And then he was, that was great.
And I failed, by the way. That was a reward for 10 minutes. I was supposed to not curse for 10 minutes, and I couldn't do it. So if that's your thing, come by my Twitch. Yeah. It's at N7 the Legend. I'm not a cozy streamer. I'm not comfy. I'm vulgar, and I like it that way.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're having fun with that. A lot of people are jumping back into Fallout because of the TV show, and the Fallout Lorecast has exploded. The numbers are ridiculous right now. So we have lots of new people tuning in, which has been wonderful. And who knows, maybe something like that will happen with Mass Effect one day. Can you imagine a Mass Effect show? That would be freaking awesome. That would be so cool. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for being here, everybody. And you know where my stuff is. robotsradio.net for my shows and a bunch of other shows on the network. And we'll be back next week with another regular episode. I have a feeling we have more Liara stuff to talk about for some reason. Pretty sure. I think the whole next month might be more Liara.
I was going to say, we're only like halfway through our Liara lore, believe it or not.
Yeah, I was making a joke. Yeah, we've got at least a few more episodes. But yeah, come back for that stuff. We'll see you soon, and stay safe out there in that crazy, crazy galaxy, and, maybe pray to whatever deities you believe in, because it's a cold, dark place out there. We'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Mass Effect Lorecast. We'd love to hear your opinion and thoughts on the lore of Mass Effect. Reach out to us on Twitter at Mass Effect Cast, or check out the Robots Radio Discord. Also, you can send us an email at masseffectlorecast@gmail.com.